guys, and welcome to this week's tutorial. We are going to create a piece of art on canvas, and I'm using Oracle 631 as a one-time use vinyl sticker using my Silhouette Cameo to cut it out. I'm actually going to have step-by-step instructions on how to do this, so you still have the internal lines of your letters here. And we're going to be, I'll actually give you some tips also for using either regular stickers, how to line up your stickers, or using a stencil so that you can create something beautiful without spending a lot of money on a fancy machine like this. So this canvas here was purchased at Michael's. It's just a beginner's canvas. And then the colors we used, dark blue, ocean breeze, those were my main colors. And then I have a little bit of a mixture of this storm cloud gray and pale blue. That's what is going to give us the pretty color variation throughout our piece. And it's really is a piece of art because you're going to make it look like there's a storm around your anchor, and it kind of plays into the whole quote. We are going to be building a wood frame for our canvas. A couple things you're going to need are a pencil and a square. It's going to help you make straight lines for your cuts. I'm using a circular saw. I highly recommend using maybe a chop saw if you have it available because it's much easier and more accurate for your cuts. I'm using a hand sander, and I'm using 150 grit very fine sandpaper. You can do this by hand if you do not have a hand sander. I'm using classic gray for my stain in combination with special walnut. The classic gray is going to give it a lighter, more beachy feel, and since this is kind of a beachy project, it's going to look nice. And to finish it off, I'm going to be using my Boss Stitch brad nailer, and I'm going to be using my 1-inch or 25mm size brads, and I have an air compressor to hook this up to. If you do not have this, no problem. You can use panel nails, and these are 1 inch in length, and they're brown to match my wood after it's stained, and a hammer. You can use that just as easy. Okay, here we are with our 1 by 1 3/4 inch piece of wood. It's actually 8 feet long. And the first thing I'm going to do is take the tag off here with some needle nose pliers, because we don't want that little staple to mess up our measurement. I'm going to measure the length first, since this is a vertical hanging piece. I'm going to use a square just to make sure I get a nice straight line here. And because I'm using a circular saw and where my cut line is, it actually takes up a little bit of space, so I'm going to measure, cut, measure, cut, measure, cut every single piece. And the reason I do that is because I don't want to subtract, I don't want to measure the next piece and then it be slightly shorter than I anticipated because of my cut line. So I'm going to measure cut, even though it's slightly more tedious. It's the best way to get accurate measurements. Be sure you're using proper safety gear, glasses while you're using your circular saw. Now because I want my top side and my bottom side to be longer than the actual canvas, I want it to cover the outside of my frame here on both sides. So I measure right to the edge and then right to the edge here. That's why we had to cut these guys first. Okay, there we go. We have our frame cut. Now we're going to sand because we have little edges like this that need to come off. So we're going to sand, make it nice and smooth, and stain each piece. Okay, I'm going to start with my special walnut. I'm all about recycling and reusing products. So this is an old t-shirt. I'm going to go ahead and open up my gray here. And I'm going to use the same t-shirt, the same rag to stain the project. And yes, I'm going to be going from the special walnut to the classic gray. And it doesn't really bother me because I almost always mix these two stains together. So I don't mind if some of the special walnut gets into my gray. You can see it's a nice warm walnut color. I try to re-dip after every piece of wood so that the color is consistent with all the pieces. And I go back and forth to make sure it gets into the grain and the rough spots. And then I do one long smooth motion over it so that there aren't any spots that are more stained than others. Probably aren't going to notice a huge difference as we're doing the gray. But when it starts to dry, you're going to notice it's a little bit more of an ashy color rather than the warm kind of yellow of the walnut. There we go. And we're going to let these dry. Okay. I have let my boards dry and we are ready to put together our frame. That looks good. So the first thing I did was I checked each board to see which side I liked the best and which side I wanted on the outside of my frame. And now that I've found that, I'm going to flip each one over because we're going to flip our canvas over. Flip this canvas. And I have set up my brad nailer. These are my 1-inch brads. And they're all the way flush to the front and the flat head is towards the back. They're ready to go. I've turned on my air compressor. And I want to make sure that my top here is flush with the canvas, flush with these other two pieces here. And my first brad I'm going to put in is going to be straight into the canvas. Okay. Now I'm going to push the base up to the canvas and center that. And because I was using a circular saw, and sometimes one piece can be just a tiny bit shorter than the other, I might want to find the exact center if I have a little space on either end and make sure that I center it exactly so you don't have one big gap. But this piece looks really good, so I'm just going to push it in nice and tight, add a brad there, and a brad here, and I am right-handed, so I'm going to turn my whole piece around. Make sure both sides are center here. And there we go. That looks great. And now I'm going to add a brad in each corner so it connects my end pieces together. Just make it more stable. Perfect. There we go. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you have any questions, please post them in the comments.